Be sharing with you in this video how to be emotionally unreactive to your environment and create your state of consciousness from within. And this is going to allow you to create your vision faster. This is going to help you to achieve your goals faster, in my personal opinion, because what happens is that life will almost want to make you react. Like, life is going to put you in situations in every single area of your life where it almost wants to see if you can react and just see, are you going to follow through with who you say you are? Because if you're saying that you're some type of way, life, of course, will challenge that in every single way. Every single way, life will challenge you to be the person that you agreed to be. And so the first thing that I want to share with you in this video in terms of how to do this is to understand that energy does flow where attention goes. So this means that ultimately, if a negative emotion is coming up in your experience, if something is arising, of course, you can't necessarily control that. We do have 80,000 thoughts per day or something crazy like that. And the emotions that come from that, sometimes in my personal belief and my experience, are not necessarily within our control. You can't always control if something comes up. But what you can control is resisting it and then giving it energy. That's one thing that you absolutely can control, is resisting a negative emotion and then giving it all this extra energy that you don't have to be giving it. That's really what you can control. Because of course, if something's happening, if something's arising, maybe you didn't see that coming. But then what you can, the variable that is within your power, that you can control again, is giving it more energy than you need. So when that emotion comes up, the best thing that you can do is stop giving it energy. Stop giving it unnecessary energy. And how do you do this? Well, really, I think that 90% of this process is ultimately just awareness. It's just awareness of the fact that you're being emotionally reactive. Because what happens is that when we're being very emotionally reactive to a very high level, it's usually very unconscious. We don't realize how unconscious it is. And so what happens is that if you're truly conscious with the negativity, with what's happening, you will learn faster. You will learn faster and you won't react more than necessary, because a reaction coming up again might happen, but are you going to react even more on top of that? Or are you going to add more stress on top of that? That's totally within your power to see that that's something you can control. And again, the way that you do this is just really, again, 90% of this process is just to be conscious, just to be aware, just to notice that the reactivity is happening. And of course, there's a second step to this, which you do have to realign back with your vision, back with what you want to create. Because when that negativity does come up to the surface, which it's going to, what you can control again is refocusing on your vision, taking action towards what you want to do. A lot of times action is simply what can completely remove any negativity in your experience. I really think that a big part of anxiety, why people feel anxious, why people feel upset in their life, is that they're not taking action in a certain area that they know they have to take. That's all anxiety really is. It's just somebody not taking action on something that they know they have to take. And that's what I think anxiety really comes down to, because if you know that you're a person of integrity, that you follow through with your word, that you commit to who you say you're going to be, you're really not going to have any anxiety. And if you do, that anxiety is just going to be seen as just yet another opportunity to be unreactive to it, unreactive to the negativity, to be more of who you want despite what is happening. Which leads me to the second thing that I want to share with you in this video, which is just to understand that, reactivity is just, and this pull to be the old person that you used to be, really is just a test. And I want you to start to see it like this. Reactivity and this pull to react to your reactions, to react to anger. You feel anger coming up, you react to it and you become more angry. and then you double down on the anger. So does that make sense? So what happens is that when we feel sadness, when we feel anger, when we feel upset, when we feel anxious, rather than just seeing it for what it is and then listening to what is happening, because life is, as cliche as it sounds, it's not to be airy-fairy here. Anxiety is your communication guide. It's telling you something, like it's communicating to you that you're doing something that's out of alignment with who you want to be. That's your emotional compass. That's your intuition. That's your inner guide. That's always there. And if somebody tells me that that doesn't exist, what that shows me is that they've never been taught the skill sets to listen to their emotional compass, which is a very basic skill set. Like, I don't understand why people don't get taught this at a very young age, because to simply learn in your emotional compass is really one of the greatest skill sets you can learn in your life. If you're able to see that this reactivity and this pull is just simply a test, and what do I mean by a test? A test for your vision, who you want to be. What happens is that when we set on to be a person, to live into an intention, to be something different, to create a new identity, to live into a different version of who you want to be, what happens is that inevitably so, old versions of who you are start to arise to the surface. And then rather than seeing it as normal, as a normal part of reality, a normal part of transitioning to a different identity, rather than seeing it as just sort of like a life asking you, like, are you really sure that you want to move into this new direction? Because here's all this old stuff, here's some challenges, here's some negativity, let's just see if I can throw you off center just to really make sure, like, is this really what you want? Is this really who you want to be? And then rather than seeing it as, oh, maybe this means I shouldn't really do it and it's not for me. Or, oh, why is this happening to me? It should be so much easier. Or like, oh, this shouldn't be happening to me. And you're just a pure victim. Rather than all of that, you see negativity and challenges that are out of alignment with your vision, whether internal or external, as just life kind of just throwing some stuff at you. And you just pass the test. You just pass the test, rather than failing the test every single time because you don't even realize that there's stuff that's going to happen and have proper expectations. You have good expectations. You expect that these things are normal. You can see it as a test. You can see it as the old reality. You can see it as life, asking you, whatever perspective resonates for you. But ultimately, old stuff is going to come up to the surface. That's not what you like. It's not what you like. It's not what you want. It's definitely what you don't want. In fact, it's the opposite of what you want. But that contrast has to be there. So does that make sense that the contrast has to be there in order for there to be light, to be something better? And of course, it sounds cliche, but we often forget that negativity and contrast is a normal part of getting clarification on your preference, having more clarity on what you prefer, more clarity on what you want in your life, what you truly feel resonates for you based on your negative experiences, because you realize what you don't like, what you will not tolerate, what you will tolerate in your life, what your standards are. And of course, on the other end of that, the pain that comes from not living into that, and then you deciding what you do not tolerate in your life. So when you feel this reactivity, when you see that there's this pull to kind of just like be this old person and just do the same thing again and live into the same patterns and be the same person that you used to be, when you look at that, just look at that as just a test. And what I mean by a test is just kind of like life double checking with you. Are you really interested in who you say you want to be? Are you really interested? Because if you are, you wouldn't stop taking action. Oftentimes we stop taking action when we're about to achieve what we want because we self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is normal. I think ego patterns of who you used to be is normal. The question is, are we going to see that as normal, or are we going to be blindsided by it? And then maybe it's like somebody grabbing the rug while you don't see it, and then you fall over because they pulled that rug under you, and you just get totally backhanded from the back, totally blindsided. You get swindled. You get completely swindled. And so how do you avoid this? Well, it's seeing that, number one, it's going to happen. Old patterns will come up. Number two, see it as an opportunity. Stop seeing it as, why is this happening to me? I'm a victim. See it as an opportunity. See it as just another opportunity to live more into who you want to be, because being a victim doesn't get you results. Being a victim means time passes by, yet nothing is happening, and there's a stagnated state. If time is going to happen and move on no matter what, you may as well just do something better. If you can for no reason in life can just be, inherently meaningless. If that can be a reason for you to be upset, it can also be a reason for you to be happy, just because it's your preference, because you're allowed to want that, and there shouldn't be any guilt or shame or negativity associated with choosing positivity, because it is a choice, right? When you choose positivity, what's going to happen is that you're going to convince yourself why you can't be positive, why you have to feel guilty, why you have to feel shameful, why you have to be a victim, and you have to go back and to do all things that you don't like, that aren't aligned with who you want to be. You're getting perhaps into a state of inaction. Whatever the case is, we have to start to realize that, we don't have to, but it's always better to realize, in my personal opinion, that these things happen, and then see it for how you want to see it. See it for what it is, of course, which is just, it is what it is, but then see it how you want to see it, because why not? Because you want to. And the third thing that I want to share with you to connect all of this back is to realize that, excuse me, if you're feeding negative emotion, you really fail the test, and you're just recreating old stuff that you don't want. So if the negative emotion comes up, and then let me give you a scenario where you feel angry about something, and then you feel angry about the fact that you're angry, and you say to yourself, why am I feeling this way? Why am I so angry? And that's not a bad question per se, but if there's resistance associated with that, rather than a genuine curiosity, because you could really self-reflect and just be like, for sure, like, why am I so negative? That's different. But if what I'm saying is that if you're asking yourself that question from a space of saying like, there's all this internal resistance to the anger, to the negativity, and you're really telling yourself that something is happening but it shouldn't be, that's insanity. That's insanity. That's self-attack. That's the ego inflicting pain onto itself even more than necessary. Why not just let pain be enough as it is? Life's already painful. Life is already negative. Life already has enough challenges. There's no need to create all these fake scenarios in your mind and negative stories about how your life is even worse than it is. Because if you have a house, if you have water, if you have food to eat, and you're watching this video, you're really just fine, and there's no problem. Everything is good. You're going to be just fine. But what happens is that we convince ourselves that things are so serious, and that things are so negative, and that everything needs to be taken seriously. And it's like when just one simple negative emotion coming up, and then we turn that into so much more chaos. Often that's the ego and the unconscious part of us will turn it into so much more chaos than necessary. Oftentimes, perhaps maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes of pain processed and let go can be turned into months and years of misery. Perhaps imagine if people carried lifetimes of pain because they just can't let go and understand that what they're attaching to is giving them lots of suffering. And they're okay with the suffering on some level, because otherwise they wouldn't make that choice. And that's not for you to judge, or even judge a person and look at and decide how they're feeling, because you don't know what a person's experience is like. You could look at a person and you could think that they're suffering, but they could be in an enlightened state of bliss. You don't know what a person's life looks like. Even if they appear angry, you can use your emotional intelligence to decide not to give yourself access to a person. That's totally fine. But at the end of the day, you have no idea what a person's experience is like. So it's not about judgment here. It's just about understanding that for you, you can take responsibility and take accountability for all the things that you've been doing. But more importantly, understand that take your power back in regard to your ability to respond to anything that comes up, right? Because you might have anything come up in your experience, whether it's an external challenge or maybe something internally comes up for you. How do you respond to that? Or you can have a proper attitude, a positive attitude towards these things coming up, because a positive attitude will take you much further than you think. Because for me, when I can simply admit that negative emotions are a part of life, There's like, you can look at many things like the art of avoidance and the law of attraction and focusing on what you want. And these are all amazing things, but nothing, in my opinion, should take you away from fully experiencing the present moment as it is. Now, from that space, absolutely, we should focus on our goals and we should create what we want. But if you're going to be feeding negative emotion into all these versions of yourself that you used to be, you're never going to be able to live into a new reality. That's not going to happen because there's no possibility in belief or spaciousness to even believe that there's going to be a way for you to become something more, a way for you to expand and to become something different. If there's no possibility that you can even improve and become something different, you'll keep recreating all those negative emotions every single day, living into the past. Every single time you get close to a breakthrough, get close to something new, you might just choose the old reality again, take another 6-12 months off, and then not even realize what you did by the end of it and realize, well, what was that all about? And you look at that in hindsight and you say, that's all self-sabotage. So the key is to forgive yourself faster. Forgive yourself faster for any time you've done this, because again, if you get upset at yourself for any time you've done this, or if you're doing this, that's only recreating even more negativity on top of that. So why even resist that? Forgiveness is the key here as well. You're not going to be able to let go of this negative cycle of thinking into a downward spiral if you keep judging yourself for doing this. Because resisting resistance on top of resistance is not going to help you to get rid of resistance. Does that make sense? Throwing more fire into fire is not going to take away fire. That's just not going to work. You have to let the fire burn, let it go away naturally. And if you want to throw water on the fire and take it away faster, at the very least, just stop adding oil to it first. Realize what you're doing. Realize that you're throwing oil into it and you're throwing more oil and a lot of things that are more wood, and you're making things that are making the fire burn more, and you're wondering, like, why is it happening? Like, that's exactly what the ego does. The ego and the part of us that self-attacks doesn't even realize that it's doing this until after. So when you realize this, again, forgive yourself and then stay aware, stay conscious, let yourself be centered, not emotionally reactive to your environment. Create that state from within. Understand that when a negative emotion comes up, don't fail the test. And if you're feeding it negative emotions, you're failing the test. That's the point that I wanted to make, is you're failing the test completely. So if you're doing that though, forgive yourself and then don't let yourself do even more of it is another part of the solution. I really believe that if we take more responsibility, which is again really our ability to respond to situations, we're going to start to become more emotionally unreactive, because we start to see that nobody has ever made you feel anything. People walk through life and they believe that people are making them feel stuff. No, stuff is happening and then you have an opinion about it. That's what's happening. And then you have feelings about your opinions. And then there's feelings associated with the opinions that you have about what's happening. That's really what's happening. Now, there might be genuine pain inflicted onto you from the outside, but you also have an opinion about that as well. And you can genuinely make painful experiences more painful. Pain can happen, but you might not suffer. That's the difference between pain and suffering. I'm not saying that pain's not going to happen. I'm saying that if you disidentify with the unconscious ego construct, you might just not suffer anymore. But then that lack of suffering almost allows it for the pain to go away faster. And it just comes in as a temporary experience and then it leaves. And the same with positivity. You won't attach to positivity, and that's a beautiful thing, because an amazing, beautiful experience, if attached to, can become your worst nightmare very quickly and create a lot of pain and suffering for you. So I think that the solution here is to live in the middle, to live in what some cultures call the middle way, and to really be that person where you don't need to be attached to either comfortability or uncomfortability, positivity or negativity. You honor both the masculine and the feminine traits of life. They're both going to be used at different times in your life, but just to see that these dynamics exist, just to see that they're going to happen, that there's going to be old parts of you come up. as you're creating this intention to live into a higher vision, that's already going to increase your chances of success much more than somebody that doesn't even realize that they're being tested almost, if you want to see it like that. Now, a test is just one way to look at it. I'm not saying that life is testing you necessarily, but if you begin to see it as a test and see it as an opportunity, watch how magic begins to happen. Watch how now you don't attach to the problems in your life anymore. You just see them as what they are, and then now you choose to see how you want to see it. You can see something for what it is and then do nothing about it, and then live your life the same. You can also see something for what it is, choose to make something better out of it simply because why not? What's the alternative? To be the same or to live into the past even worse and to recreate the past? To me, that alternative is unacceptable. And if you get to a point in your life where I would strongly want this for any person where they realize that the pain of the past and staying complacent is unacceptable to the point where it becomes the choiceless choice where you have to change. Now change has to happen because you can't force somebody to change. They have to realize that the pain of what they're creating and what they're doing to themselves, that's when a person will change, is when they have consciousness and awareness of their pain. When they have like true consciousness of, wait a second, I'm realizing the pain that I'm doing to myself. That's when they're going to change. So oftentimes, this is why you can't control a person, where you have to make a person, not really make them, of course, that sounds the opposite of what I'm saying. You have to help guide a person to realize that their pain is not acceptable for them and that there's a solution that only they can control, that only they have power over. And when you help a person get to this point, what happens is that they start almost effortlessly taking action because there's just no alternative in their life anymore. If there's still an alternative, if there's still a possibility of an alternative for you, you're not on the energy of being aligned with who you want to be. If there's still doubt in your mind, well, let me say it like this. Doubt is normal, but if you're still using doubt as a reason to not take action, you still haven't figured it out. You still don't understand. The person that takes massive action, it's not that they don't feel scared. It's not that they don't feel worried. It's not that they're not just as worried or feel just as much as pain as you. It's that they've chosen to take that pain and to turn it into gold. It's not that a person that gets massive results in their life is any less worried or any less in the unknown than you are. It's that they don't take the unknown and feeling pain as a reason to stop taking action. And if they do, they forgive themselves incredibly fast and they get back into the program and they continue being disciplined with very little resistance to anything that they did in the past, and they don't attach to their mistakes. They don't claim that their mistakes define their identity, because they don't. Your mistakes don't define your identity. I'm not really concerned about what happened in your past. The truth is that it doesn't define who you choose to be now. It doesn't define who you decide to be in this present moment. So I think that if we walk through life with this awareness, that's almost more than half the battle. That's where a lot of the success and the magic and the growth and the transformation really happens, when we start to realize that everything that you want already exists in this present moment, and all you have to do is stop resisting it. Stop resisting it. Why is it that the best ideas come when you're showering or you're not resisting anything? Because you're not feeding any negative emotions. You're just letting things happen. And you can let things happen and combine that with a specific intention, and notice how your emotional compass gets activated. Watch how your inner guide, your intuition, becomes very heightened and very strong, and you simply have an instinct for when you're being aligned with your purpose. Because you know your purpose. You know who you are. You know where you're going. You know why you're doing it. And if you live out of alignment with that, you feel anxiety. You should feel anxiety. You should feel anxiety. That's your body telling you, why are you not doing what you said you're doing? I think that people forget that guilt and shame and negativity is a completely normal part. Sometimes you should feel guilty. Sometimes if you're being a person that's dishonorable and disrespectful to the environment, and you made a mistake, and even though you didn't realize you did it, you didn't mean it, you didn't understand that you were doing it, but life is not concerned about if you didn't mean to do it. You still did it, and it still caused pain. So if that's happening, there has to be accountability, and only if there's accountability Can there be a true letting go and becoming something more, becoming a different person? But we can't keep kidding ourselves and recreate the old version of who we used to be over and over and over, and then expect that we're just somehow going to become different. And things are just somehow going to be better. Someone's going to come save you. Things are magically going to happen in a way where there's bunnies and there's roses and it's perfect weather outside. And it's like, that's just not life. Life sometimes has pain and it gets ugly and it gets messy. And the question is, what's going to be your attitude when that happens? How are you going to look at that situation when that happens? Are you going to have a negative attitude and then recreate more pain and suffering on top of the pain? Or are you going to experience the pain and not suffer? Not suffer, because suffering is resistance. Pain is what it is. Pain can be a reason for you to have inaction, and just as much as it can make you not take action, you could also take that same pain and decide that it's a reason why you should take action. It gets really up to you, you know? It's totally your decision. If you want to take pain and decide, like, you know what, this means like I'm just not going to do anything with my life, that's totally your decision. If you take pain as just another reason to continue taking action simply because that's the decision that you're making for yourself, it's the decision that you make for yourself, and that's going to be the result that you see happen in your life. So I strongly invite and encourage you to stop seeing pain as a bad thing. Don't see pain in contrast as a negative thing. See it as a blessing. See it as an opportunity, and you'll see that life will prove to you that it is an opportunity if you choose to see it as such. If you choose to double down on your negativity, if you choose to double down on all the things that you don't want to see happen in your life, then that's going to be the choice that you have to live with, because there's not enough humbleness, there's not enough submissiveness almost to life to show you that life is going to get messy. Why? Because when you choose to be something else, messiness is just past stuff. And that's your cue to not be reactive, to continue taking action. And I think that if we understand this, anxiety stops becoming something that we resist. It becomes something that we see as almost information telling us if we're in alignment or if we're not, and then simply to correct our behavior as needed and become the person that we want.